It started with a folder. Not a new one, not something obvious, just one I didn't remember putting there. It was sitting on the edge of my desk, slightly angled, as if it had been placed carefully rather than dropped. Beige, thin, the kind you get in packs of 10 and never really think about. I noticed it because I don't leave things like that. My desk isn't perfect, but it's consistent. Papers go in piles, bills on the left, letters near the lamp. Anything important stays in the drawer until I deal with it. This folder wasn't part of that, and that's what made me stop. I didn't open it right away. I stood there for a second, looking at it, trying to remember if I had moved something the day before. Maybe I had taken papers out and forgotten to put them back. Maybe it was one of those small moments you don't track, but something felt arranged, not messy, not forgotten, placed. I reached for it slowly and opened it. Inside were documents, my documents. At least they looked like mine. Bank statements, insurance papers, a few printed emails, all neatly aligned, too neatly. I picked up the first page. It was a bank statement from last month. I remembered seeing it. I didn't remember printing it. I flipped to the next page. Another statement, then another, then something else. A form, half-filled, typed in some places, blank in others. I frowned slightly, because I didn't recognize it, not the layout, not the wording, not the structure. At the top, in bold letters, account access authorization. I stared at it for a moment. Then read further, name of account holder, my name, authorized secondary user, blank, reason for access, partially filled. To assist with account management, the sentence trailed off, incomplete. But enough to understand where it was going. I closed the folder slowly, not because I was done, because I needed to think. Where had this come from? Not the documents, those were mine. The structure, the organization, the form, the intention behind it. I looked around the room. Everything else was exactly where it should be, nothing out of place, nothing missing, just this. I picked up the folder again and carried it to the kitchen, placed it on the table, then made coffee, not because I needed it, because I needed something normal, something unchanged. The kettle boiled, the sound filled the silence, and for a moment everything felt exactly as it had the day before, until I looked back at the table and saw the folder again, still there. Still intentional. She came in around 9, no knock, just the sound of the key turning. That had become normal too. "Hey," she said, walking in with her bag over her shoulder. Same tone. Same rhythm, same presence she had been bringing more often lately. "Morning," I replied. I didn't mention the folder, not immediately. I wanted to see. She placed her bag on the counter. Walked to the sink, rinsed her hands, all the same movements. Then she turned, her eyes went to the table, and for a second she paused, not long, just enough. Then she smiled. "You found it," she said, not surprised, not confused, not asking, stating. I nodded slowly. "Yes." Silence, because now the moment had already happened for her. She had expected it. Planned for it, I pulled out the chair and sat down, gestured lightly toward the folder. "What is this?" I asked. She walked over, sat across from me, not hesitant, not defensive, just ready. "I started organizing your documents," she said. The words were smooth, practiced. "I thought it would help to have everything in one place. Help, always help." I opened the folder again. Turned it toward her. "This isn't just organizing," I said. She glanced at the form, then back at me. "It's just a draft," she said. "Something we might need later." The word landed quietly. But it stayed. "What for?" I asked. She folded her hands on the table, carefully, like she had already thought about this answer. "In case you need help managing things," she said. There it was. The direction, soft, reasonable, but clear. "I manage my things," I said. She nodded immediately. "I know." The same pattern, acknowledgement, without change. "Then why this?" I asked, tapping the form lightly. She didn't hesitate. "Because it's easier to set things up before they become a problem." Easier. Again, always easier. I leaned back slightly. Because now the folder wasn't the problem. It was the next step, something that came after something else, something I hadn't noticed yet. "When did you do this?" I asked. "Yesterday," she said. "While you were out," a simple word, but now it carried something else. Opportunity, access, time without me. You went through my documents, I said, she nodded. Yes, no apology. No hesitation, just confirmation. I looked at the folder again, at the way everything had been sorted, aligned, prepared, because now this wasn't about one form, it was about everything inside it. Everything she had touched, everything she had decided to include or not include. What else did you move? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. Just things that needed to be grouped together. Grouped. Another word, another step, I nodded slowly, because now the pattern was starting to show, not sudden, not aggressive, structured. Step by step. First, access, then organization, then preparation, then authorization. I closed the folder again, placed my hand on top of it, and for a moment I didn't say anything. Because now the question wasn't what she had done, it was how far it had already gone, and what she had been planning before I even knew it had started. I didn't move the folder. That mattered. Because moving it would change something. Not in the room, in the pattern, and now I needed to see the pattern clearly. So I left it exactly where it was, under my hand, between us. She watched me. Not impatiently, not nervously, just waiting, like she had already reached this point before, like she knew what came next. You don't have to worry about it, she said, soft, careful. I'm not doing anything without you. The sentence sounded reassuring, but it didn't land that way, because now I had already seen something, the form, half-filled, prepared. Before this conversation, before my awareness, before my agreement. You already started, I said. She didn't deny it. I just got things ready, she replied. Ready, another word, another step. Not action, preparation, something that exists before permission. I slid the folder slightly toward the center of the table, not away, not closer, just repositioned. Her eyes followed the movement. Instantly, tracking, that told me more than her words, because she was watching the folder, not me. I opened it again. Slower this time, more deliberate, and I didn't stop at the first pages. I went deeper, past the statements, past the emails, past the obvious, because now I wasn't looking for what I recognized, I was looking for what I didn't, and I found it, 3 pages in. Another form, different from the first, more complete, more structured. At the top, digital access management request. I felt something settle in my chest, because now this wasn't about paper. Or filing, or organization. This was about control. I read it carefully. Username references, account recovery options, authorized contact. Again, blank in some places, filled in others. Her handwriting this time, neater than mine, more consistent. Why do you have this? I asked. She didn't hesitate. In case you forget your passwords, she said. Forget. There it was, the word. The reason, the foundation. I don't forget my passwords, I said. She nodded. I know, again, the same pattern, acknowledgement without agreement. But if you did, she added, trailing off. Leaving the sentence open, because the conclusion was obvious, because it didn't need to be said. I placed the paper back into the folder, carefully, because now every page mattered. Every document was part of something. How many of these are there? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. What do you mean? How many forms? A pause, then a few, the same word, again. Always the same, minimized, controlled, I nodded slowly, because now a few meant something different. It meant enough to matter, enough to build something, enough to justify the next step. I flipped through the rest of the folder. Slower, page by page, looking for patterns, not content, structure, and I found it. Each section grouped, each document placed with intention. Bank. Insurance, digital access, appointments, each one with a corresponding note, small, handwritten in the margins, check frequency, follow-up needed, delay observed. I stopped. Because that one didn't belong. Delay observed. I read it again, then looked up at her. What does this mean? I asked. She glanced at the page, then back at me. It just means you took longer to respond, she said. Took longer. Not missed. Not forgot, delayed, measured, observed. I felt something shift, because now this wasn't just preparation. It was tracking, quiet, careful, documented. You're keeping notes, I said. She didn't deny it. I'm just trying to understand patterns, she replied. Patterns, the word stayed. Because now everything had one. My actions, my timing, my responses, all of it observed, recorded, organized. I closed the folder again. Slower this time. Because now I wasn't looking at documents. I was looking at a system, one that had been built quietly, step by step, without interruption, without resistance, because I hadn't known. I leaned back slightly, looked at her, really looked, not as my daughter, as someone who had created something, something structured, something intentional. How long have you been doing this? I asked. She hesitated, then said, a couple of weeks. The same time frame, again, calls, contacts, now documents, everything aligned, everything connected. I nodded because now the timeline was clear. This didn't start with the folder was just where I noticed. You went through all of this while I was here, I said. She shook her head slightly. Not all of it. A pause. Some of it when you were out. There it was, the same word again. Out, time, access, opportunity. Without me, I stood up slowly, not abruptly. Just shifting, because now sitting felt like staying inside something, and I needed space, not distance. Perspective. I walked to the counter, poured myself more coffee. Even though I didn't need it, because I needed movement, something normal, something not structured. She watched me, didn't speak, didn't interrupt, just waited, because she expected something. A reaction, a question, an argument, the next step, but I didn't give it to her, not yet. I turned back toward the table, looked at the folder, then at her. Because now the question wasn't what she had done, it was what she believed she was doing. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now that question mattered. Not for the structure, for the truth. I didn't want to worry you, she said, the same answer, again. But now it didn't sound the same. Now it sounded like a reason she had repeated to herself. More than to me, I nodded slowly, because now I understood something clearly. This wasn't about helping me stay organized. It was about preparing for something she believed was coming. Something she thought she had already seen, and the folder was just the first visible piece of it. I didn't sit back down. That mattered. Because sitting would bring me back into the structure she had already prepared, across from her, at the table, with the folder between us. That was the position she understood. The one she had been waiting for, so I stayed standing, near the counter, just outside of it, enough to change the space, enough to change the pattern. She noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes followed me just slightly, adjusting to the new position. Not reacting, adapting. You don't have to go through everything now, she said. Her tone was softer again, controlled, measured. I'm not rushing you, I almost smiled. Because that was exactly what it was, not rushing, just progressing step by step, at her pace, on her timeline. I'm not rushing, I said, calm, simple. I'm just not following this the way you planned. Silence. Because that sentence didn't fit anywhere in her structure. It didn't argue, it didn't agree, it stepped outside. She shifted slightly in her chair, just enough, then said, I did plan anything. The denial was quiet, but not fully convincing, not anymore. I walked slowly back toward the table, not to sit. Just to look again, at the folder, at the pages, at the notes, because now I needed to see something clearly, not what she said, what she did. I opened the folder again. Turned to the page with the handwritten notes. Delay observed. I traced the words lightly with my finger, not touching the ink, just following it. How many delays? I asked. She hesitated. Then said, a few, again the same word, but now I needed more. How many? I repeated. She looked at me, then down at the page, then back at me. Maybe 4 or 5, she said, 4 or 5. I nodded slowly, because now there was a number, something concrete, not just a feeling, not just an impression, observed, counted, documented. And what qualifies as a delay? I asked. She took a breath. Not responding right away, she said. How long? Another pause. A day, she said, a day. I almost laughed, not out loud, but inside, because now the line had become clear. Not missed, not forgotten, delayed by a day. I looked at her. Do you respond to everything the same day? I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now the structure turned back on her. I try to, she said. I nodded. That's not the same. Silence, because now the difference mattered. Trying and always doing, expectation, and reality, she shifted again. More noticeably this time, because now the control wasn't stable, it was being questioned. You didn't answer your email last Tuesday, she said. I looked at her. Which one? The insurance one. I thought for a moment, then remembered. I answered it Wednesday, I said. She nodded. That's what I mean. Delay, again, defined, measured. I leaned forward slightly, placed both hands on the table, because now this needed to be clear. That's not a problem, I said. She didn't respond, because in her structure it was. Everything had been built around it, everything justified by it. Delay, pattern, concern, preparation. I closed the folder again, but this time I didn't leave it in front of her. I pulled it slightly toward me, not taking it away, just changing its position. She noticed immediately, her posture shifted. Small, controlled, but real. Why are you doing this? She asked. The question was different now, not structured, not rehearsed. Real. I looked at her, because now the answer mattered. I'm trying to understand where this started, I said. She blinked, just once. Because that wasn't what she expected. What do you mean? She asked. I tapped the folder lightly. This didn't start yesterday, I said. She didn't respond, because she knew that. This didn't start with the documents, I continued. Still nothing. And it didn't start with the delays. Silence. Because now we were getting closer to something earlier. Something smaller, something that had grown. I watched her, because I needed to see it. The moment, the shift, the origin. What made you think I couldn't handle things? I asked. The question stayed in the room, clear, direct, unavoidable. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved. Not away, inward, searching. Then she said, You forgot something. The words were quiet. Almost hesitant, I waited, because that wasn't enough. What? I asked. She looked at me, and for the first time there was no structure in her expression, no control, just memory. You left your card at the store, she said. The sentence was simple, small, almost insignificant, but it stayed, because now I remembered it. A few weeks ago, I had paid for groceries, walked out. Realized halfway home that I didn't have my card. Went back, it was still there, behind the counter, nothing lost, nothing stolen, just forgotten. Once, I nodded slowly. Yes, she watched me. Carefully, you didn't notice until later, she said. That happens, I replied. She didn't respond, because now that moment meant something different to her. Not an accident, a signal. Not a mistake, a pattern. I looked at the folder again, at the pages, at the notes, at the structure built from that moment, and I understood something clearly. This hadn't started with a plan. It had started with a decision. A small one, quiet, unquestioned. And from that decision, everything else had grown, the documents, the notes, the forms, the preparation. All of it built on a single moment that I had already moved past, but she hadn't. And now, I wasn't just looking at a folder. I was looking at something she had been building, since the day she decided that moment meant more than it did. I didn't answer her right away. Because that moment, the card at the store, it mattered. Not because of what happened, because of what she had made it mean. I walked slowly around the table, not to sit, not to confront. Just moving, changing the space again, because staying still felt like stepping back into something she had already defined. You think that meant something, I said finally. She didn't respond immediately, because now she wasn't sure how to frame it. It wasn't just that, she said, a small shift, an adjustment. What else? I asked. She looked at the folder. Then back at me. The email, she said. Which one? The insurance one, I nodded slowly. The one I answered the next day. She didn't deny it. It still took longer than usual, she said. Usual. Another word, another standard, one she had created, one I hadn't agreed to. I leaned against the counter, because now this wasn't about events, it was about interpretation. You're building something out of small things, I said. She shook her head slightly. I'm noticing patterns. Patterns, again, always patterns. I looked at her, really looked. Because now the difference mattered. Noticing and deciding, one observes, the other concludes. What pattern? I asked. She hesitated, then said, You've been slower. slower, the word stayed. Because it wasn't precise, it wasn't measurable, it was felt. Slower than what? I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now the comparison mattered. Then before, she said, before. Another undefined point. Another reference, I nodded slowly. Because now the structure was complete, before, after, better, worse, faster, slower, all relative, all interpreted. All turned into something that justified action. I walked back to the table, opened the folder again, flipped through the pages, faster this time, not reading, scanning, looking for something else. Something I hadn't noticed yet, and I found it, near the back, a printed email, not mine, not something I had sent, something I had received, from my doctor's office. Appointment reminder, standard. Routine, but there was a note on it, handwritten small, did not confirm until later. I stopped, because that one was different. I looked at her. I confirmed this, I said. She nodded. Yes, on time, she hesitated. Then, technically, that word changed everything. Because now this wasn't about what I had done, it was about how she measured it. I placed the paper back down slowly. Because now, every action I had taken was being evaluated, measured, compared, against a standard I hadn't agreed to. You're not tracking mistakes, I said. She didn't respond. You're tracking differences, I continued, still nothing, and turning them into problems. Silence, because now the structure was visible, not hidden, not subtle, clear. She shifted in her chair, more noticeably this time, because now there was no space left to adjust, no room to reframe, only the truth. I'm trying to prevent something, she said. The words came out quickly, almost before she could stop them. There it was, the real reason, not help, not organization, prevention. I nodded slowly. Prevent what? She looked at me. And for a moment, there was no answer, because saying it out loud would make it real. I don't know, she said finally. The honesty surprised me, not because I didn't expect it. Because she hadn't allowed it before. I just don't want it to get worse. Worse. Another undefined point. Another assumption. I leaned back slightly, because now the structure wasn't logical. It was emotional, built on something she couldn't fully explain, something she had felt then tried to control. You're solving a problem that doesn't exist, I said. She shook her head. It could, not does, not did, could. I nodded, because now everything was clear, not certainty, possibility. And she had built certainty out of possibility. I closed the folder again. This time firmly, not aggressively, just decisively. Then I placed both hands on top of it, because now there was only one thing left to address. Have you signed anything? I asked. The question landed differently, not part of the previous flow, not expected. She froze, not visibly, but I felt it. A shift, a pause, something stopping. Why would I sign anything? She asked. The answer came quickly, too quickly. I held her gaze because now this mattered, more than anything else. Because you were preparing to, I said. She didn't respond. Because now the possibility was there. Not just forms, not just drafts, not just preparation. Action, already taken. I waited, didn't move, didn't speak. Because silence forces truth. And after a few seconds, she looked away, just slightly, then back at me. And that was enough. Because now I didn't need her to say it. I already knew. I didn't raise my voice. That mattered. Because raising it would turn this into something emotional. Something she could respond to, defend against, reframe. I stayed exactly where I was, hands on the folder, eyes on her, and waited. She didn't speak. Not immediately. Because now there was nothing left to soften, nothing left to adjust, only something she either said or didn't. Have you signed anything? The question was still there, unchanged. She exhaled slowly, looked at the folder, then at her hands, then back at me. Yes, she said, quiet, simple, final. I didn't react, not outwardly, because I needed the rest. What? I asked. She swallowed slightly. The bank form, she said. The words landed without resistance, because now we were past denial. I nodded once. When? A few days ago. The same timeline, again, everything aligned, everything connected. And you signed it as me, I said. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then, yes. No justification, no explanation, just truth. I looked down at the folder, at the form, at the blank space where a signature should be, then back at her. Did you send it? Another pause. Yes. That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, but complete, because now this wasn't preparation anymore, it wasn't planning, it was done. I leaned back slowly, because now the structure had moved beyond this room, beyond this table, beyond this conversation. It existed somewhere else, recognized, accepted, in effect. What else? I asked. She shook her head quickly. Nothing else. Too quick, too controlled. I didn't respond because I didn't need to. The speed of the answer said enough. Only the bank, I said. She nodded. Yes, silence, because now we were at the edge of something, not just what she had done, what it meant. You signed my name, I said, not a question, not an accusation. Just stating it, she looked at me. I was going to tell you, she said. The sentence came out automatically, like it had been waiting, like it had already been said somewhere else. When? I asked. She didn't answer because now there was no right time, not anymore. You were waiting, I said. She nodded slightly. Yes. For what? She hesitated. Then, for it to be easier. Easier. Again, always easier. But now there was nothing easy about it. I stood up slowly, not abruptly, just shifting. Because sitting there felt like staying inside something that had already moved beyond control. I walked to the window, looked outside. The street was the same, people passing, cars moving. Everything normal, unchanged, but inside everything had shifted. I turned back toward her. Do they think you're me now? I asked. The question landed differently, not about action. About consequence. She didn't answer immediately, because now she had to think about something she hadn't considered fully. I told them I was authorized, she said. Authorized, not true. But accepted, I nodded slowly, because now the difference mattered, not what she believed, what they believed. And they accepted that, I said. She nodded. Yes, of course they did. Because from their perspective, it made sense. A daughter helping her parent. Nothing unusual, nothing to question, unless you were the one being replaced. I walked back to the table. Placed my hand on the folder again, because now this wasn't about the documents. It was about control, not inside this room, outside it. I need to see exactly what you sent, I said. She hesitated. Then reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned it toward me. An email, sent 3 days ago, to the bank, attachment included. Subject line, updated authorization details. I read it carefully, line by line, her words, written as if they were mine. Please update the account access to include my daughter. My daughter. Not her name, not her identity, defined by me through her. I felt something settle, not anger, not shock. Something clearer, understanding, because now there was no confusion left. She hadn't just helped, she had stepped into my place, quietly, completely, and the system had accepted it. Without question, I looked up at her, because now there was only one thing left to decide, not what she had done, what I was going to do next, and this time it wasn't going to be observation. It wasn't going to be understanding. It was going to be action. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't accuse her, I didn't even move right away, because now everything depended on what I did next. Not what I said. I looked at the email again, at the way she had written it, at how natural it sounded, how easy it would be for someone reading it to believe it came from me. Then I handed the phone back, carefully, like it mattered, because it did. This gets undone, I said, calm, clear, no hesitation. She didn't argue, not immediately. Because now there wasn't a version of this where she could explain it away. You don't have to do it all at once, she said. The same tone, the same structure, the same pattern. I almost smiled. Because even now she was trying to manage the pace, control the process. No, I said, I do. That stopped her, not dramatically, just enough, because now the direction had shifted, completely. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, scrolled to the bank. My thumb hovered for a second, not because I wasn't sure, because I understood what this meant. This wasn't just correcting a mistake. This was reversing something that had already been accepted, already processed, already real. I pressed call. It rang once, twice, then good afternoon. Hi, I said. I need to correct an authorization request on my account. A pause, typing, of course. My daughter is not authorized to manage my account, I said. Silence. Longer than before. Because this time there was a contradiction, something already on file, something now being challenged. I see an authorization submitted recently, the voice said carefully. That's the one, I replied. It wasn't signed by me. Another pause, then understood, typing again, more deliberate. Would you like us to revoke that access? Yes, no hesitation. No explanation, just yes, a longer pause, then it's been removed. Done again, simple, immediate, final. Thank you, I said, then I hung up. I didn't look at her right away. Because I needed that moment, to feel what had changed. Then I placed the phone on the table, in front of me, not between us, on my side, because now that mattered. She was watching me. Not trying to hide it anymore. What if I was right, she asked, the same question again, but now it landed differently. I met her gaze. Then we deal with it, I said, the same answer. Because it was still true, because it didn't change, she nodded slowly, but I could see it. The shift, the uncertainty, the absence of the structure she had been relying on. I reached for the folder again, opened it one last time, looked at the forms, the notes, the system she had built, then I closed it, firmly, not aggressively, just final. This stops here, I said. She didn't argue, didn't push, didn't explain. She just sat there, looking at the folder, then at me, then back at the folder, because now there was nothing left to manage, nothing left to prepare. Nothing left to control, only something to accept. I stood up slowly, walked to the counter, poured myself another cup of coffee. Routine, normal, unstructured, because now that was the point. When I turned back, she was still there, still sitting, still quiet, still processing. What do I do now? She asked. The question was real, not structured, not prepared, just honest. I looked at her because now this wasn't about what she had done, it was about what came next. You stopped deciding things for me, I said, calm, clear, simple. She nodded. Yes, no hesitation. Because now there was nothing left to justify. I walked back to the table, picked up my phone, then placed it in my pocket, not on the table, not within reach. Because now I understood something completely. Control doesn't disappear when you take it back. It changes shape. It waits. And if you're not careful, it finds another way. I looked at her one last time, because now the line was clear. And for the first time since this started, everything on my side of it was mine again. She didn't leave right away. That was the first thing I noticed. Usually, after something like this, after a conversation that reached a clear end, she would gather her things, say something soft, something careful, and go. But this time she stayed, sitting at the table, hands resting in front of her, not touching the folder, not reaching for anything, just still. What about the rest? She asked. The question came quietly, not defensive, not structured, just uncertain. I looked at her. The rest of what? She glanced at the folder, then back at me. The documents, she said. The organization, the system. She didn't say that part, but it was there. I walked back to the table, picked up the folder, held it in my hands for a moment, because now this wasn't just paper. It was intention, time, effort, something she had built, carefully, even if it had been wrong. I opened it one last time, flipped through the pages, slower now, not scanning, seeing the notes. The categories, the structure. Each page told me something, not about my life, about hers. The way she needed things to make sense, to be ordered, to be predictable, to feel safe. I closed it again. And this time, I didn't place it back on the table, I held it. You don't get rid of this, I said. She looked up, surprised. I do, I shook my head. No, a pause. You just don't use it on me. Silence, because that was what she expected. I placed the folder down, not between us, to the side, out of the center, but not hidden. Because pretending it didn't exist wouldn't fix anything. She nodded slowly, processing, adjusting. What if I noticed something again? She asked. The question was careful, measured. Because now she was asking for a boundary, not assuming one, I leaned slightly against the table. Then you tell me, I said, not them. That distinction mattered. Because that was where the line had been crossed. not noticing, acting, replacing, she nodded again. Yes, more certain this time, because now there was a structure she could follow. One that didn't remove me from it. I picked up one of the documents from the folder, the one with the handwritten note. Delay observed. I looked at it for a moment, then handed it to her. Keep your notes, I said. She took the paper, carefully, like it meant something different now. But change what they mean. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? I met her gaze. Not every difference is a problem. The sentence stayed, because now that was the root of everything. Not the forms, not the signatures, not the access. Interpretation. She nodded slowly. And I could see it, something shifting, not completely, but enough. I walked to the door, opened it, not to leave, just to create space. The hallway was quiet, unchanged, normal. I stepped back inside and looked at her. Go home, I said, not dismissing, not pushing, just ending the moment. She stood up slowly, picked up her bag, looked at the folder, then at me. Then back at the folder. I'll leave this here, she said. I shook my head. No, a small pause. Take it, she hesitated, then picked it up, held it in her hands, not as something she controlled. As something she was now responsible for, in a different way. She walked to the door, stopped, turned back toward me. Tomorrow, she asked, the same question, but now it meant something else. Not continuation, choice, I nodded. Tomorrow, she left. The door closed softly behind her, and the apartment became quiet again. But this time it felt different, not empty, not watchful. Just mine. I walked back to the table, looked at the space where the folder had been, then at the rest of the room. Nothing else had changed, and that was the point. Because the change hadn't been in the objects, or the documents, or the forms, it had been in the line between us, and now that line was clear again.